Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's an NFL insider for the Pro Football Network and the host of Broncos Country Tonight on KOA 850 in Denver. Please welcome Benjamin Allbright to the program. Benjamin, it's great to have you on. How are you?
It's good to be back. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here. What was your reaction to the Sam Darnold trade?
Not surprised. Carolina, they had been pretty heavy on the on the Deshaun Watson thing, and after that situation started to turn south, they pulled out. They had to find a different way to pivot. They knew they were kind of rocking a hard place in terms of quarterback availability and where they're drafting there at 8. They just, I think that the Darnold trade really says a lot about what they thought about QBs 3, 4, and 5 in this draft, and I think that they said, well, we can just roll the dice on a guy who's the same age as the guys in this draft, and kind of see where it goes. And so Friday, I guess, we had Mike Garafolo on the show, and we were chatting about it. Mike said, the Carolina thing was probably going to happen. And sure enough, it did a few days later.
Is Darnold repairable to you?
I think so. I mean, he's a young guy. I mean, the dude's 23 years old, he's younger than some of these kids in the draft. I think that if you go back and you look at other quarterbacks that have been in bad situations and been in bad offenses and had bad coaching. I mean, look what Ryan Tannehill turned into when he got away from Adam Gase. So I'm not saying Sam Darnold's going to turn into a world burner, but he had a lot of tools coming out. People thought very highly of him, and I think getting him in an offense that caters to his strengths really beneficial for him.
Do you think Teddy Bridgewater is a worse option than Sam Darnold talent-wise?
Yes, I do. Teddy Bridgewater has played roughly 3 full seasons all total. He's had a 12-game season, a 15-game season, 16-game season. Never thrown. Last year was the most touchdowns he'd ever thrown. That was 15. And the 2 others, it was 14. I mean, we have to look at that as a litmus test here in Denver for Drew Lock, who only played 12 games last year but threw 16 touchdowns. So, Teddy Bridgewater's not really a red zone quarterback. That's the thing. He's had problems in the red zone. Doesn't have the strongest arm, and he's kind of been dinged up and injured over the course of his career. So I don't think he's a particularly great option at quarterback. I think he's a spot start backup type guy. I think that's who he is. I think it's what he is. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that he's a guy that you view as a long-term starter in this league.
Where do you think he latches onto right now?
Well, they've been shopping him for about 3 weeks and got absolutely no bites whatsoever. I don't think anybody's trading for that contract. So, I think for me, I think the way you got to look at this is, if you're Teddy, they gave him permission to go out and seek a trade. I don't think that's going to turn up anything. I think what you're going to see eventually is a mutual parting of ways, air quotes, how we see those. And somebody will pick him up at that point. Teams that would be interested, maybe Denver, maybe New Orleans, maybe Chicago. I really don't think they would go that route with what they already paid Dalton, and they've been sniffing around trying to trade up in the draft a little bit. So I don't think I don't think that'd be the case. I think I think New Orleans or Denver are probably options A and B.
Benjamin Allbright here on Sports Talk Chicago. Benjamin, why'd the Bears sign Andy Dalton?
Well, you had to have somebody. You had to have a play. You had to have a quarterback. And I mean, at the end of the day, you got to have somebody throw the football. And Nick Foles isn't exactly the most inspiring option on the planet, and he may not even be there when the season starts. So I think that I think you went out, you look, you said, okay, well, we're going to try and see if we can get in the draft and get a guy, but we do have to get younger at some point. But we have to have somebody who can throw the football now. So you went out and looked at a guy like Dalton, who's taken several teams to the playoffs, and he's a capable player in this league. He's not really anybody that's going to put a team on his back, but if you got a good enough defense, he's a guy that can win you some football games. And you look what he did with the Bengals. I sad it, but I don't think it's as laughable as everybody tries to make it out to be. I just think that it's not inspiring.
Could he succeed in the Bears uniform, do you think?
It depends on what your definition of success is. I mean, Andy Dalton's not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he's capable of taking a football team that's got a good defense to the playoffs. And if you view playoff berths as success, then sure. If you view, if you're trying to be a Super Bowl contender with him, I've got some real estate to sell you in the middle of the ocean.
Are the Bears officially done at quarterback, do you think?
No, not at all. They've been sniffing around trying to trade up in the draft. I don't think they're going to be able to, but they've been sniffing around it. So that to me, that indicates that they're not done.
If they don't trade up, could they draft someone at 20?
Potentially, or you could look at a mid-round, later round developmental guy. There's plenty of guys available in the second day two on that that might inspire as a developmental project. You can see a Kellen Mond or a Kyle Trask or Jamie Newman. There's plenty of guys there in those mid-rounds that'll be all right.
How do you feel about them specifically fitting in with the Bears?
If I'm a general manager, I'm not hitching my wagon to any of those guys ever turning into anything. But as a dart throw, sure, why not?
How likely would you say a Ryan Pace mistake is again?
This feels like a trick question. The only thing you have to go on is somebody's history. And if you take a look at the history, it hadn't exactly been good. So I would suggest that when you couple the fact that the history hasn't been good and the success rate is already low, I would say that if you're a betting man, that was the side of the house to bet on.
If he misses the boat again, Benjamin, is he on the hot seat? Should he be fired?
I think he's on the hot seat already. So I don't think that changes anything. I think that the moves that they've made right now, the Bears have got to win this year, and that's part of the reason you bring a Dalton in is because that at least he's not going to mess you up in terms of trying to get to the playoffs, and that might buy you another year. So I would suggest that staff is incredibly on the hot seat. It might be the hottest seat in football right now.
Same with Matt Nagy too, right?
Yeah, yes, both of them, the pair, because that decision will be made on both of them. It's not going to be a one or the other.
Benjamin Allbright here on Sports Talk Chicago. Benjamin, let's talk about the Deshaun Watson saga. What's the latest involving this situation?
Well, you've got 22 accusers on the civil side of the house. You have one criminal complaint filed. We know there's going to be another criminal complaint filed in the next 2 weeks. And the criminal complaints are not tied in with the civil suits. They're not tied into Tony Busby, the lawyer, or any of those women. So that's a separate issue altogether. I think a lot of people are on the wrong side of this. I think Deshaun Watson has a problem. I think that the overwhelming preponderance of evidence already shows that there's at least an issue here. Who needs 50 massage therapists? No player I've ever heard of has even has a fifth of that. And I went around and polled about 50, 60 different players. The biggest number I came up with was 6, and that was a player who's in his 12th year. So, the idea that you need this many different massage therapists is a red flag in and of itself. And there's some other stuff behind the scenes. We're still working to corroborate some things as far as this goes. But I think people are, I think putting a public face on it yesterday that's not the attorney was a good move for those women. If you're a person that believes in Deshaun Watson, I think you're probably on the wrong side of this.
If that's the case, what does his future look like in the NFL?
What future? I mean, if you're that guy, I mean, in this era, I don't think you get away with it. 10 years ago, Ben Roethlisberger did, but there's just not. There wasn't as much. Social pressure as there is these days. And I'm not sure. I mean, maybe he gets another chance somewhere, but Michael Vick got another chance after prison. A little bit different situation, but still, he may get another shot somewhere, but he'll be radioactive for the time being.
Is there trade interest in him still?
No. Carolina was the foremost trade team that was looking to trade for him, and they pulled out a couple of weeks ago. There's absolutely no interest in trading for him right now. I know there's been some speculation about maybe a team trying to throw a lowball offer in or something, but absolutely no interest that I'm aware of.
What do you think the outcome of this whole thing is?
Ultimately, on the civil suits, Deshaun probably settles. And tries to get non-disclosure agreements. The problem with that is any evidence that gets put into these things, because the Texas records are public, will be out there. And that's been the problem so far for him from that side of the house. It was a little different with Roethlisberger where it was filed. Those things weren't a matter of public record. And so, now he's fighting different battles than 10 years ago had to. So I think ultimately the civil cases, Deshaun probably settles. The criminal complaints, we don't know if there's enough evidence there for criminal action to be taken and charges to be filed. If criminal charges are filed, that's going to be a severe problem. But I think as it stands, ultimately somewhere down the line, Deshaun's going to have to settle all this.
Let me ask you this then. Come game 1 of the 2021 season, will Deshaun Watson be in Houston, on another team, or suspended?
I think he'll be on the commissioner's exempt list, and I highly, highly doubt he plays this season at all.
Really?
Yeah, it won't be resolved by then, I don't believe.
Wow. That should be a wake-up call to a lot of people, I think.
Well, it should be, but again, people, and here's the problem: is I get a lot of people that tweet at me and tell me, innocent until proven guilty. And well, yes, that is true in a criminal trial. In a civil suit, that there's no presumption of innocence, and you don't have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. You just have to prove that it was more likely than not. So a civil suit is much more likely to win, and there is no presumption of innocence.
Benjamin Allbright, still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Benjamin, two more questions before we finish up. First off, your favorite band to listen to is who?
My favorite band to listen to? Oh my goodness. What genre? I tend to go across a bunch of different genres. I've been on a kick lately where I've been listening to kind of this 80s influenced electronic stuff with a band called The Midnight. So that recently has been one.
And Benjamin, before we finish up today, last question. What's your best Twitter roast that you've doled out?
Oh my goodness. And how family friendly do I have to be here? Let's see here. I'll try to say this as best I can. Somebody made fun of something I wore. I wear the zany outfits sometimes, and I'll post that stuff. Somebody made fun of something I wore, and so I said, it's not the worst thing I wore. And that person responded back with, "Oh yeah, what was that?" And I said, "I wore out your mother last night."
What was their response? Did they even respond?
I don't think they had a response at that point. I don't know. It was, somebody a while back, one of those magazines, I think Complex Magazine, did top 10 of, the roasts I put out. And I had forgotten about that one, actually, but they posted that one in there. I think it was number 2, and number 1 was like the Zaghloul beef. So.
Well, Benjamin, thank you so much for making the time. Really appreciate it. And best wishes, especially in trying to corroborate all this evidence and also cover the draft coming up soon. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.